What's good, Atlanta? This is the Blog and Dirty podcast, where Dirty Bird is the word. If you haven't heard, I'm your host, John Buhler, lead writer for FanSided. Got an exciting show for you guys today. As always, be sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, give this thing a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere there's podcasts. Really helps the show grow. Again, a little housekeeping here. This will be the final show before I go to Germany with my fiance. There will not be a show next week. We will have one the day before the first round of the NFL draft next Wednesday. So there won't be one on tax day. So go pay your taxes. Just, Buhler says do that. Be a good American, or I don't know. You can keep your money if you really want. If you don't want to pay taxes, that's fine. I don't care. But I'll have one back here on April 22nd here. So I'm going to have some exciting stuff for you guys here in the heart of the offseason after the draft, particularly in the slow months. And again, this is the time of year where I feel like I thrive. Again, I appreciate every single one of you subscribing and liking the show. Up to 371 subscribers. But I'd like to get into 420 before 20. Maybe we still will. Maybe you'll do that for me while I'm in Germany. But that's neither here nor there. And on that note, let's get rolling here today with our first run of the day. And that's going to be the Falcons have some new uniforms. They're an improvement, but it's not what I wanted. Oh, my God. This isn't that hard, but this is the Atlanta Falcons, so they choose to make it hard each and every single second of each and every single day. This is just what they do. I do think that the players who are going to be wearing these uniforms, again, it's a little more, red, black, white, kind of some sort of compromise of everybody on the team is like, hey, let's go to the throwbacks. And Arthur Blank's like, no, but we'll get them as close as we possibly can without going to throwbacks. Again, I think this is very crisp, very clean. It'll work. And I think, this comes down to the players who wear them. Do they feel cool when they're wearing it? Because if they do, then they'll play better. Or that's what I hope to believe. Here's what I'll say. They should have gone to the retro throwbacks from the 90s. That's our uniform. That's what it should be. Go the same logo. Just do that. That's a time, that's an era of Falcons football where I have the most sentimental attachment. That's when I became a fan. That's when the original Dirty Birds were birthed in 98. Deion Sanders wore that with the back and black era at 91. Michael Vick wore that initially in 01 once he got drafted. And look, even though Arthur Blank didn't own the team then, he changed it later because God forbid, the one good thing that Rankin Smith and his ownership group did, let's not celebrate that in our 60 years of whatever the hell we've done here. I know it's just so frustrating here. It is an improvement because anything is an improvement over that god-awful monstrosity we had the last 5 years. What kind of harebrained thought during COVID did we think that was cool? We look like a bunch of just sad, pathetic T-ballers, like kids who they play 1 year of T-ball and they quit because they're quitters. They're not athletic. They're just a bunch of sad boys looking like, they're going to go have a sleepover, with the baseball pants with the drawstring and not the belt. I've seen that. I grew up with that with East Side baseball. You know what I'm talking about here. Just anything and everything is an improvement over what they had. Anything is an improvement over the gradients. Whoever thought of that idea should be fired. And if they're not fired, they should be fired for the next 4 jobs. Just shouldn't be employed. It was so bad. But look, if you have everybody on the team feeling good and being excited about the uniforms, then I'm all for it. Again, maybe I'm an old man yelling at clouds. I'm 36 going on 37. This isn't for me. It's the same story. I've gotten to the point where look, all-star games don't mean anything to me. I don't care. Home run derby is the most worthless thing on earth. I think it's, just the dumbest thing alive. But again, I'm not 10 years old anymore. Maybe this is in line for more, creating new fans and everything like that. And again, that's kind of what you need here. Get the people before they develop their allegiances towards whomever or whatever at that given point in time. But look, here's what I'll say. Teams don't change jerseys if they win. If you win, you keep the same thing out there because, even if the jerseys look weird, if you win them, they become cool because they represent something far greater. Have you seen the Packers change jerseys ever? You see the Bulls? Even though the Bulls are hella dysfunctional, they've pretty much had the same thing forever because it's so sentimentally tied to Michael Jordan, the Packers with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers and everybody else like that. When you're changing uniforms constantly, you're basically just the Titans. It's such a regrettable move for Bud Adams to leave Houston to go to Nashville. Again, Nashville is an emerging market. I'm glad they have a team. but like they want to be Houston so bad that they've become the Oilers, and everybody's like, "What the f, man?" I almost swore on this show. But like when you have a rich, robust history, you don't need to change stuff up. I mean, I'm a Braves fan. Like they pretty much have worn the same jerseys my entire life. Everybody's like, "Oh, let's go to the Hank Aaron '74 throwbacks." Like, no, I don't like those because that represents a time when the team sucked. I don't care about that. I know the City Connect one kind of goes back to the Dale Murphy era in the 80s, but that outside of 82, that team was trash. Like, we don't need to celebrate mediocrity anymore in this world. We need to celebrate the good stuff because that's the standard you need to hold yourself to. I know we had a meeting here with FanSided full timers, and they had a really nice clip that Hunter and Sean and Joanne and all the video team put together of clips of everybody around the network who does a show like this. Like I do Blog and Dirty, other people do other stuff here, and they had a clip of me taking my Falcons hat off, pointing back to. It's like we need to get back to this. We need to. We just choose not to. Until we do that, until we cross that Rubicon, until we like honestly confront that, we're going to be stuck in the same pile of crap. But you know what? We're in it together, and that's what it is. But you know what? It's an improvement because I mean, really anything was an improvement over what they were. But again, like I'm not wearing them, and that's okay. And on that note, let's get to our second run, something a little more positive, something I'm actually going to run with. Kyle Pitts signing his franchise tag is only a good thing. Here's why. Look, this is going to be year 6 for him with the Falcons, drafted in 21 out of Florida, got the 5th-year option picked up. And then obviously he had a great first year there at 21 with Matt Ryan throwing him the football. And then obviously had a really strong year last year with Cousins and Penix throwing him the ball. Middle 3 years, not so much, but like the talent's clearly there. Look, I think like I've interviewed Kyle Pitts before, likable guy. Not the most like alpha personality, but a good hard worker, and we'll put stuff in. We'll put in the work to be good. And I think he likes playing for this team. I think he likes the guys on the team. I mean, he's like, is really anything better out there? If I leave Bijan Robinson or Drake London or even Michael Penix Jr., however you want to label that. But like he and his representation, I think he's a David Mulligata guy, if I'm not mistaken. That sounds about right. I think him and AJ Terrell both share that same representation. But like, look, he signed the franchise tag so he can be there. This is a new staff. This is a new regime. And this allows Ian Cunningham and Matt Ryan, the rest of the front office, to come together to try to find an extension. And look, I think Matt Ryan being here is a big deal because Matt Ryan loved throwing the ball. And I think everybody in Falcons, like who's played there or knows him, like knows what a stud this guy was. And I think like this removes any sort of distraction. I know last year he was kind of like, I'm not going to be here for any sort of voluntary stuff. People are like, okay, we're going to trade him or not. Like you got out ahead of this. This is good. He was the first guy to get tagged. He signs his extension. We're not dealing with some T. Higgins nonsense here. And I think with that, like that derailed the Bengals. We don't need that. We need to get better than 8 and 9. We need to move forward and be better. And I think what this does is like, look, we'll figure this out. Because the next big thing the Falcons have to figure out is how they're going to pay Drake London. He's next up. And then Bijan Robinson comes along. And you get drafted Tyler Algier, and he wanted a bigger role, and he goes to the Cardinals to play for Mike LaFleur and everything like that. So, like, you got to figure this sort of stuff out. I think A.J. Terrell and Jake Matthews, former first-round picks, homegrown players, like, they took less money or they restructured their deals to kind of free up some stuff because – I think they all know how important Drake London is. I think the rest of the NFL world is starting to realize this guy that we have there at wide receiver is a stud too. Mike Evans is out of the division. The new Mike Evans is here. Also, Mecca Ibuka and Tetairoa McMillan are certainly on the come up there, in the NFC South as well. But like just to not have to deal with this headache all off season is a huge, huge help for this team. There's so many moving pieces. There's a new head coach with Stefanski, new GM with Cunningham, Matt Ryan's president of football. I mean, Jeff Holbrook's still back calling, the defense, but like, there's a lot of new faces here. There's a lot of, we don't need something like this holding over the franchise here. I mean, Kyle Pitts could have been an ass about it. I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, yeah, it hasn't actually been like, rainbows and sprinkles and fairy dust since he's come here. It's been a lot of just 7 and 8 wins. That's it. You bank on it every year, man. It's been so frustrating, but, I'm good with this. Like, I think this certainly helps the team out in a way. And also I think the fact that Kevin Stefanski's, offensive minded coach, former offensive coordinator with the Vikings, former head coach of the Browns. They love throwing the football to the tight end. You can ask people like Kyle Rudolph, David Njoku, TJ Hawkinson. I don't know if you overlap there, but like this is a big deal. Also, I think the fact that Austin Hooper's back. Again, this is a guy who played his first 4 years out of Stanford with Atlanta. Got some big time money there. I think who the hell he played for? Browns, Titans, Raiders, Patriots. I honestly don't remember or care. But like his best years were here because he had Matt Ryan throwing the ball. Look, Matt Ryan's not going to throw the ball anymore because he's 40 now and he's in the front office role. But like, I think just knowing with Pitts or with Hooper could come out there and says like, look, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You come in here, you focus in on, building something here, and that's your legacy. Because I mean, a lot of these guys who are in Falcons lore, who have occasionally good teams here that stayed here for a while, they're remembered fondly. Look at guys who are in the Ring of Honor. Jesse Tuggle, I don't think he played anywhere else. Jeff Van Nett, I don't think he played anywhere else. Bart played a little bit somewhere else, like Rams maybe a season. Gerald Riggs maybe a little bit. William Andrews, like guys from yesteryear. Roddy White, Matt Ryan, like players that I guess Julio at some point once we cross that bridge here. But like, do you kind of want to be held in that regard here? And I think this is kind of a crossroads for Pitts to do that. And I think more importantly, I think he gets it. I think he sees the bigger picture here, and I'm really excited about that. And on that note, let's get to some pass. I don't know if he's really good at passing, but I don't necessarily know if I want to have Haynes King be a part of the Falcons quarterback room. And again, I want to take a sip of coffee here because I'm talking to myself, and this is a great place for the mid-roll ad because that's how it rolls here at Block and Dirty. Look, this has nothing to do with me being a Georgia guy. This has nothing to do with Haynes King being a Georgia Tech guy. This is kind of about what happens when you draft like a local product or have him come to your team. It's the same sort of thing where like, I don't really want Stetson Bennett to be the Falcons quarterback because I think in a lot of ways when you have the hometown hero on your team, unless your team is just absolute trash and you're just like, we're not doing a damn thing this year. We're going to be picking the top 5. We're going to draft a quarterback next year. Like we saw this kind of ruined the Steelers. They tried it with Kenny Pickett, out of Pitt, and didn't work out. I don't know what team he's on now, but he's got a ring or something. He's just collecting jerseys like he's Josh McCown. When you have a player who starred, I'll even throw Auburn in this equation too because they're right there. We do kind of have that with Tua a little bit, with Alabama, but that's not really the same thing. I would say like Columbus, Georgia is the metroplex that like Auburn pulls from. Alabama pulls from Birmingham. But anyway, like when you have like you're a guy who starred, at a college nearby, it's going to bring a level of intrigue with your fan base in here. And I know for years Georgia was like, the Falcons like, we're not drafting Georgia players. They were like, oh, we want to avoid that. Thomas Dimitroff was all about not drafting Georgia guys. He drafted Akeem Dent. I think that's it. But obviously Terry Fontenot turned it around. Ian Cunningham has kind of been more in that line. And look, this has nothing to do with like them being in the backyard. They're doing it because that's a good program. And Georgia Tech's a really good program. They're well coached under Brinke. If there's other guys out there on jackets that want to play here, I'm all in favor of that. I just want to get more good football players here. But like this is kind of like opened my eyes. Like I think the quarterback position's different. I think you need to go out of your backyard. You need to go out of your comfort zone. You need to kind of look for a different thing. And also, I think the thing with King is like 6-year player, injury history. He played at A&M for a couple of years, then Tech. Run first kind of quarterback. Again, tremendous leader, college football legend. Probably the most important quarterback to play for Georgia Tech since Joe Hamilton. And believe me, growing up in Atlanta, like Joe Hamilton in the 90s was a huge, huge deal. But like, it's a throwing league, and maybe he could be like our version of like Taysom Hill. And again, like we only have 5 picks. Like I know Ian Cunningham wants to trade back and get more picks if we can. Like 5 is going to be the minimum. He said like, in a conversation, I think with AtlantaFalcons.com, he's like, that's going to be the minimum. Like that's the hand we're dealt. They're going to try to get more. And if he's like a 6th or 7th round pick, like I'm not going to fall to pieces over it, but like you don't want to like you don't want to leave things to doubt. And I always talk about this with the late U.S. General Norman Schwarzkopf. He's like, we got to fail fast. We got to fail fast. We got to find out quickly, like, if this guy can do it or not. We don't need to throw other variables in the situation to get in the way of that. Like, we kind of did that with Desmond Ridder. We're like, oh, can he play? We're like, oh, we still kind of know. And we didn't. We delayed that, and that cost us. There's other teams out there. Like, look, the Packers may do a better job of this than anybody. They did this with Aaron Rodgers for 3 years on the bench, Brian Favre. They did this for 3 years with Jordan Love, Brian Rodgers on the bench. Like, most brands do not have that. Most teams don't have that brand equity to do this. You got to know if your guy can play. We got to know this year if Michael Penix Jr. can do it or not. Because if he can, then maybe we can work with this. And if we can't, this is a really loaded quarterback class coming up there in 27. Look, I know the guys like Arch Manning and CJ Carr are going to be at the top of the list. Don't really want either of them. But, like, there's other quarterbacks out there. Sam Levitt, maybe Lawrence Sellers could be good. Gunnar Stockton, but maybe not here per se. I'm trying to think who else is out there that's a really high-end quarterback. Again, like, I don't know. Noah Fafita can really spin it, but he's also like 5'6". I don't know. Honestly, like, if you're going to go with Haynes King, you might as well go with Diego Pavia because it's kind of like the chip on the shoulder kind of guy here, and he can make it work. But, like, it's the same sort of thing like we had Felipe Franks here. Again, he carved out a role as being like a tight end, special teams guy, and more power to him. Maybe Haynes King will be built of that ilk, but, like, we're trying to make the playoffs here. We haven't done that in a very long time. The only team that hasn't done it since we last made it is the Jets. Every team in the NFC, all other 15 teams have made the playoffs more recently than us. Let's figure it out. Let's just stop. So, like, again, maybe Ian Cunningham will be like, okay, local guy, let's kind of do this. Let's try to build up some equity. We don't need low-hanging free wins. We just need wins. And I don't necessarily know if Haynes King can provide that. And on that note, let's get out of here with some punt. It remains to be seen how much of a mentor Kirk Cousins is going to be to Fernando Mendoza. So Kirk Cousins, we saw with the title card here, he is now off to Las Vegas. He signed his deal. His agent, Mike McCartney, is like, hey, we're going to Vegas. He's going there. He's worked with Clint Kubiak before from their time in Minnesota. That's where Cousins probably played his best football of his career. Again, he was here for 2 years. He gets released. And I think we're still on the hook for $8 million of his contract or whatever. The guy's a Hall of Fame bag getter. Man, he's unbelievable. But I've mentioned this. Fernando Mendoza. I'm just taking a sip of coffee here before I really unpack this here. I've got some thoughts on this. Fernando Mendoza, I think, is different. I think he's the last quarterback that I felt this way in the college game was Joe Burrow. Like, it's very similar. Like, they were good, and then they were great their final year. But Joe Burrow's final season at LSU is like the greatest quarterback season I've seen in a long time. I mean, like, that and Cam Newton in 2010 at Auburn. Like, that's so different. Fernando Mendoza at Indiana, like, Indiana doesn't make the playoff. Indiana doesn't win national championships. Well, he doesn't win the Heisman trophies. Well, he did all that. I used to kind of call him like he's like the Cuban version of Kirk Cousins, just enthusiastic as hell, like kind of a rah-rah, go get him guy. Play kind of similarly. Mendoza's more athletic. He'll tuck it and run a little bit. Cousins, not so much. He's also been compared favorably to Matt Ryan, Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady. Like, those are each like, a step up of the quarterbacking hierarchy there in the NFL world. But, like, I forget who is it, Dan Orlovsky. Just, oh my God. Thinks Ty Simpson's like the QB1 of this class. I think Simpson will work. The problem is I don't think he's got the leadership traits of Mendoza. Like, Mendoza is the ultimate foxhole guy. He just wants to play football with the boys. And I think he's going to be joining a team with Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers and Colt Miller and Tom Brady's in the organization. Like, I know it's the Raiders, but, like, it's gonna work. It's gonna be a more believable version of what we thought it could have been with Derek Carr. And I think Cousins is like, look, Cousins is going to show him how to, like, take snaps under center. I think Mendoza took 5 in his entire career at Cal in Indiana. Like, that's all he did under center. And while I think that matters in some ways, Orlovsky's like, look, Clint Kubiak is not going to change. Well, he's going to have to, because there's only 32 of these jobs. And if you're going to be, like, incredibly hubris of this, like, Look, Mark Davis is like, you're taking Mendoza. Like everybody at this point is like, you're taking Mendoza. If he can't do it, then you have to adapt. Cousins couldn't really do under center for a while because of his knee. He kind of figured it out. Like the NFL is like, you got to adapt. If you try to go like, my scheme, my fit, my everything, you end up like Chip Kelly. Everybody thinks you're a buffoon. We don't need that. And I was kind of dubious of this with Clint Kubiak throughout the hiring process while we went with Stefanski. I think Kubiak doesn't really have the personality of a head coach. I think that there's a chance that it's not going to work for him there in Las Vegas. Not really much of a fan of that hire. He kind of picked that role, but like if he was of a better ilk, he would have gotten like the offensive coordinator at the Super Bowl champion Seahawks. Like you would have gotten a better job than the Raiders. But also the Raiders' job is a lot better than like what it has been years past. Like if you were that good, you would have gotten like, I don't know, the Ravens or like the Steelers or the Giants. And you didn't get any of them. But obviously I don't think that I think Mike McCarthy is going to be terrible for the Steelers. And I'm not in on John Harbaugh there in New York. I do think Stefanski makes the work here. But like, look, I don't necessarily know if Cousins, I mean, he mentored a little bit with Penix, but like, I think he was kind of forced into that. He kind of signed on thinking like, okay, I'm going to finish out my prime here playing for my wife's favorite team who grew up in Alpharetta. But then they draft Penix a little bit later. And again, that kind of defined the Terry Fontenot era at the front office and everything like that. Like, so maybe that kind of got forced onto him. Obviously, you only sign with the Raiders if you know, like, okay, they're going to draft Mendoza. I think everybody knows that, except I think Orlovsky is like still scrambling outside of the back of the end zone, trying to believe that it's not, but it is. Like the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and the Raiders on the 23rd are going to draft Fernando Mendoza, number 1. He's not going to be in Pittsburgh. He's going to be at home in Miami watching it, taking it all in. And I think there's a chance that Cousins starts a few games there for the Silver and Black. I don't necessarily know how great their offensive line is up front. And I think there may come a point where like Mendoza's got to figure out, to be able to sell a play action fake because he's athletic, but everybody in the NFL is an athletic freak. And at some point, like, you can't just be a rah-rah guy. And maybe it's more authentic with Mendoza than anything else, but like, this is the best of the best. And the Raiders have been very dysfunctional for pretty much all my life, outside of the 90s and very early 2000s here. But we'll see if he's going to be a mentor there to Mendoza. He probably should, because like, look, he's got to understand, like, he's pushing 40. He's got a budding media career when he wants it. You want to finish your career, on a decent note, because look, you're not getting into Canton, but you can be held in high regard. As like a quarterback who isn't in Canton that I grew up with, I don't know if they're held in high regard. Like, I love me some Drew Bledsoe back in the day. I love me some Donovan McNabb. Do you want to be Bledsoe or do you want to be McNabb? Which direction do you ultimately want to go in here? And on that note, this was episode, I think, 88 of the Blog Dirty Podcast. You can follow me, John Buhler, on Twitter at X at Buhler118. You can follow along with the show on YouTube at BloggingDirtyFS. You can follow on X at BloggingDirty. Be sure to like, rate, listen, subscribe, review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Anywhere there's podcasts, give this thing a 5-star review. Really helps the show grow here. Again, there will not be a show next week. There will be one in 2 weeks. It'll be right up to the draft. Going to take some well-earned R&R with my fiance. Going to go to Germany. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. I just cannot wait. Oh, I cannot believe we're almost here, man. Like, what, 5.5 more hours before I get to clock out and just relax for the first time in months, man. It's been a grind. But I appreciate every single one of you. Keep hanging in there. Let's do this thing. Once again, thanks for listening. And this is the Blog Dirty Podcast.